Kind of funny because it almost looked like we had some kind of planned theme on the program here today. Yeah, welcome back to the show, the Defo Show. Jeff DeForest and Mike Lubitz here on South Florida Live, and we go into a little overtime, a little overdrive here, as earlier on the program, and our friend Jim Sarney, a former sports writer with the Sun Sentinel in South Florida, and kind of a Svengali for the show, pointed out that it's International Women's Day today, and we managed, under that umbrella to irritate the lovely and talented Leslie Visser enough to put down the speech she was writing for her Hall of Fame acceptance into the National Sports Writers Hall of Fame and call the show and take issue with a couple of things that we had to say. But this was, something that we had on the agenda, and very happy to welcome another distinguished woman journalist, or just journalist in general. I guess we don't have to make that distinction anymore, which is
Exactly.
great. Kate Fagan joins us here on the program. You probably know Kate from her work on ESPN, but she's done many other things and has many other accomplishments on her list of credentials, and she joins us here on the program. It's a pleasure to have her. Kate, how are you? Thanks for joining us on the show.
I'm good, and look at y'all down there in Miami doing right by International Women's Day.
I'm trying.
Well, it wasn't really by design, but
I heard you sure just stumbled into this.
Somewhat.
Yeah, it's not like Jeremy Schaap called us and said, I got a couple of great guests lined up for you, but we're happy to have you on the program because I'm a big fan of your work. Guys, we were saying that, and there are many women that are on TV now, and it seems like all of a sudden they've all become advocates that you should bet every dime in your pocket on something via FanDuel, which is kind of an incredible movement since it was a subject that was so taboo before. But we said you were more in the kind of Armin Katayan type of journalists, where you're out there, doing stories that are of importance and have impact, and take a very serious view and a very thorough view of them. Tell us first about this new work of yours, because I didn't realize it as I was reading your resume, but you followed in very famous footsteps, I guess, with the Philadelphia Inquirer as the beat writer for the 76ers, which that can't be any real easy beat. I mean, first off, how was that before we get into Hoop Muses and the new book you have out?
Well, I have so many thoughts because I think first I need to say that instead of FanDuel, you should be putting your betting money into DraftKings. I think that's the
okay. Yeah. Are you giving picks now? I mean, because we have a price and it's a low one if they want to get involved with us.
No, I just want to compromise my integrity as quickly as possible.
Well, and you fit right in with the show.
Yeah, I did. I covered the Sixers for 3 years, and famous footsteps I think you're alluding to is Stephen A. Smith.
Yes. And was Scoop Jackson also, a writer, the beat writer for the Sixers? Yeah.
Yeah, didn't directly. When I covered the Sixers, I wasn't directly after Stephen A. It was a few years later, but when I was covering the Sixers, it was actually this in between moment where Cold Pizza and whatever else Stephen A. was had been canceled. Oh, the Stephen A. Smith show that he had on ESPN, and it was first take, and so he was sort of back at the Inquirer, and he was writing some columns. He would be at some Sixers games. We would chat about stuff. So, covering the Sixers was a crash course in all things for me in terms of, crazy deadlines, sources, travel. I was a pup at that time. I don't know if that's the right word. I was like 26 and just trying to figure it out.
I think Quite Frankly was the name of the canceled Stephen A. Smith project there on
That's
ESPN.
Right. That's right. Thank you.
And he had a couple of home runs there when he had Allen Iverson on, and nobody could figure out, where he was coming from. But Stephen A. did a good job with, getting those type of people on the show, which would, I guess, be a pop culture crossover of some sorts. So tell us about the concept of your new book, Hoop Muses, and how it relates pop culture and the women's game is specified.
Yeah, so the book is Hoop Muses, and it is a really vibrant, illustrated history and alternate history of the history of women's basketball. So we've got Simone Augustus helped me make it. She's a WNBA legend. And Sophia Chang illustrated it. She's really big in the illustration world and really dynamic. And we just wanted to take a different approach at telling the history and pop culture of the women's game because knee-jerk instinct might be that's not something I care about, but we use comic book art, we reimagine movie posters, like Shaniqua Holdsclaw, a famous player, like if she were in She Got Game instead of He Got Game, that Spike Lee movie, So
Yeah.
we try to bring a lot of vibrancy and storytelling and create this kind of work of art that also happens to take readers through this much of it an unknown history of women's basketball.
It's interesting. We were talking about this earlier on the program, and we have a gentleman on every Wednesday who's a big fan of women's sports, and we're always being pushed, by certain people to say, "Hey, how come you haven't talked about any of the results in the women's tournament games?" And being a big basketball fan my entire life, and having loved, there was never a park I wouldn't stop at if there was a game going on. I always, thought, wow, it'd be great if women could enjoy this experience of playing basketball, and competing like this, whether it was recreationally or on some sophisticated level like college or pro basketball. And there didn't seem to be that much participation when I was growing up. I'm an ancient citizen here at 70 something, but
Hmm.
the evolution of this has really changed. And now when you watch and I'm watching some college basketball highlights and even some games, pieces of games, and you're seeing a level of play that is a radical departure from what it was even 15, 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, I mean, I played college hoops at the University of Colorado, so pretty high level, and that was my last year there was 2004, and the level of play now compared to then as you said, drastically different. I mean, even watching the WNBA playoffs last year between the Aces and the Storm, and there was like 8 back-to-back shots in the final 2 minutes. I mean, the game has just
It's better.
evolved
Yeah.
to a different level at this point. I mean, and in Hoop Muses, we try to like show the ways in which it was stalled at various points, because it was deemed unladylike, and there were limitations placed on the game. But we are now in an era where, I know there are certain segments of the population that just don't care and probably will never care about women's basketball, but all of the data and the numbers show that ratings are on the increase, social engagement's on the increase. So we are at this inflection point for specifically the WNBA about where it might be going in the future.
Well, what's interesting is not only the women's game, but women in the game. Becky Hammon is one that is considered right there with any assistant, any man when it comes to the game of basketball. What are your thoughts on seeing women not only in the women's game, but infiltrating the quote unquote men's game when it comes to the NBA?
I think what Becky Hammon represents in a lot of ways is this shift that we've seen. And some of it you have to credit Kobe Bryant with this shift of the high level NBA talent, whether it's coaches or players, really understanding what the WNBA is about and supporting it in a way that we haven't seen before. And that crossover effect going both directions.
Yeah.
Where now now we'll see like Asia Wilson, who's a Las Vegas Aces star, right? She might pop by an NBA game and she's got this kind of social cultural capital that WNBA players didn't have before. And of course, when Kevin Durant is commenting on Breanna Stewart's free agency choices, this is kind of an engagement in both directions that we've just never seen before. And obviously the spotlight when the men shine it on the women is a much brighter one, but I think both sides are seeing the value of engaging with one another.
I wouldn't want to play Diana Taurasi for money, even at the highlight of my abilities. I mean, a woman could just flat out play. Gino Auriemma, what's your feeling? Is this helping or hurting the game? Obviously, UConn has been a prominent program and did a lot to put women's basketball in the spotlight. In fact, even when they had some really good, classic men's teams, the women's team, at least in that area there, probably garnered as much attention and was as much a focal point of the basketball scene as the men's game was, even with like guys like Richard Hamilton and so many other stars that they had there. But what do you think? I mean, when you see him leaving his starters in, like with 38 seconds to go, and they're up 116 to 38 over some team. Does that enhance the game, or does that turn people off? I mean, the people that might be sitting there sort of on the edge of deciding whether they were going to embrace the game or not.
Well, I think that the days of UConn
Yeah,
dominating women's college basketball are over. I mean, I'm not saying they'll never win a title again, but they're certainly not going to be blowing people out like we saw when it was the Maya Moore, Brianna Stewart. Those are some of their stars when they won some absurd number of consecutive games. I mean, the UConn hasn't won a title since I think 6 or 7 years. I forget the exact year they last won a title. So there was a time and place for their epic dynasty. You know, it was the existence of UConn during a period of time when they were able to at least keep certain parts of the spotlight on the women's game was, I think, invaluable. But I don't think that the future of the women's game is that kind of domination. And it certainly, I don't think they'd be capable of it at this point, given the amount of talent that now exists in the women's high school ranks. There's so much more that you're seeing programs that never stood a chance before now stepping into the spotlight, whether it's Iowa, you know, and Caitlin Clark hitting game-winning shots and drawing headlines, to a program like Indiana, which has never been in Final Four contention, now being so incredibly strong. So just the wealth has been spread, which I think is good for the game, but that doesn't necessarily mean I thought UConn being amazing during various stretches was bad for the game.
I think Gino, I'm just imagining this, might be kind of Trumpian at practice, and you would never know that they hadn't won a title in 7 years. You would think that they had swept the last 7 years and were going for 8 in a row.
That swagger, you know, the UConn swagger.
Curious about this because it often comes up in our discussions about what the hell we're doing here, and that is sports talk in general. And I haven't been a part of ESPN and many of the shows that they have, which are kind of based around debates that I'm not sure what the overall worldly significance of them are. Like, does Kevin Durant really need to win another championship to cement his legacy? I mean, we get that kind of stuff all the time. What is your feeling about the direction that sports talk has taken overall? Where, when I came into it, it was obviously very heavily caller driven on the radio, and you've done radio also. And now you would never think to answer the phone because it could be an attorney with a cease and desist. But, what is your feeling about the direction the whole genre has taken?
I mean, it does seem like it's cycling in on itself, like a snake eating its tail a little bit.
Sure.
Is ESPN responsible for this, though? I mean, also.
Oh, man. I mean, of course. I mean, it is the worldwide leader. It is setting the agenda for the ways and how we're talking about sports. I do think it's like, although I think it is getting to the point of kind of absurdity or SNL level sketch comedy, I do feel that there is something incredibly valuable about the way we talk about sports. And I think just to bring it back to what I would love to see in the women's game and the way we talk about women's sports, like these types of storylines they introduce people to who's playing and they introduce people to the rivalries. And even though I think it has reached a point where we could expand a little bit on what we're talking about, maybe we could take some of that time that we're devoting to some ridiculous discussion that has no answer and we could tell richer stories. Yes, absolutely. But as you said at the outset of this interview, that's sort of the world I come from, is always wanting to lean to that stuff. And I'm not beyond understanding that the way we're talking about sports, is the easiest possible way, to do a sports talk show, having done one. Like, spending 30 minutes arguing about LeBron is pretty easy radio to produce.
Is he the greatest of all time? What do you think? we had who? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. Is Brady the greatest? Those arguments drive you crazy, and yet it became such a staple of sports talk. And it leads me to my next thing, which is while you were in radio, did you hold management in high regard?
Oh my God! I mean, I don't even remember management being involved in.
Oh, good. And then you're lucky. You're among the lucky ones. Yeah. They weren't involved with us except to be a menace, I can assure you. Yeah. We put up with 40 years of that stuff. Kate, it's a pleasure. And the book, again, is titled Hoop Muses, An Insider's Guide to Pop Culture and the Women's Game. Obviously, a very fascinating individual and a tremendous journalist and well accomplished. And we thank you so much for joining us here on the program today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was fun.
Good luck with the
Fine, a lot of
victories.
pleasure. Pleasure, our pleasure as well.